So here we are with the sales channels set up. If you've been following our Getting Started guide, you should have your channels set up now as well. And if you're doing stock control in Tradebox, you should have built your product list by now as well. So we're ready to connect it to Xero. So the first thing we're going to ask you to do is to go and log into Xero. And just log in using your normal Xero account. Xero does offer different levels of access. With Tradebox, to connect to it, you need to be using a standard level of access or higher. It can be your existing login, you can set up a login explicitly for Tradebox, whatever you like, so long as it's got that standard or higher level of access. Now, correcting things in Xero can be quite tricky depending on what's been done with an invoice. It can be a little bit convoluted. So one of the things that we'd suggest you do is to point the Tradebox integration first to the demo company in Xero. And that's a safe space that you can feel free to play about with different settings and find any problems before you start plugging it into your live Xero data. Anything that Tradebox has handled and posted through to the demo company can be quite easily reset and sent through into your live accounts when you're ready to actually flip the switch. If you've never seen the Xero demo company before, just log into Xero. And then you want to go to My Xero, so just click there and My Xero, or you can just go to my.xero.com. Here you'll see any organizations that your user logon has access to, and slightly below that we've got Try the Demo Company UK. So if you click into that, we're now in the demo company, as you can see at the top here. Going forward, anytime you log into Xero, you'll have access to both companies. You can flip between the two quite easily just by clicking here. And you'll see the most recent list of companies you've logged into, including the demo company. So once you've given access to that, we're fine to come out of here and back into Tradebox One. The connection to Xero sits within each sales channel. So if you wanted to, you could set different rules and different preferences to post. For instance, I've got an AKM web store here and an eBay store. I may want to set one set of rules for AKM and a different set of rules for eBay as relates to my Xero posting. And so to set up a Xero connection, you double click into the sales channel itself and go to the Xero tab. So you're going to need a few different bits of information and tokens to tie everything together here. The first one is your client ID, which you'll have received in an email from Tradebox support. It's a unique long string like this. I've got mine here. So I'm just going to make sure I've got the full thing. Copy that and paste it in there. Next thing to do is to register with the Tradebox Exchange. That's a section in the back end of our site, and that's where the communication between Xero, which sits in the cloud, and your Tradebox data, which sits locally on your PC or on your local network, happens. So if you click register with Tradebox Exchange here, and at this point you definitely don't have a Tradebox Exchange account, so click register, and you're just going to pop in some details. And just choose a password. This is for your Tradebox Exchange account. You will need to remember it, though obviously it's nice if you can get all your passwords saved and that sort of thing. The only requirement on it is that it needs to be 6 characters or more. And click on register. And you'll see this page here with the tokens that we need. So the first token is this long one called the token. To make sure you've got the entire string, you can triple click on it, like so. And then right click and choose copy. Leave the web browser open because we'll be coming back here a couple of times, and just click into the Tradebox One application and paste it into the token field here. So the token's the really long string and it goes into the field called token. Go back to your web browser and you should have the account ID here. Again, I can triple click to highlight the full thing. Right click and choose copy. Leave the web browser open, back into Tradebox, and paste that into the account ID field. And the last thing to do back in the web browser is click on this blue Connect with Xero button. If I wasn't already logged into Xero from a couple of minutes ago when I first logged in, you'd be taken to a Xero login screen and then it would redirect you to here. We're choosing which company we want access to. You can see I've got my live data, but I'm going to connect to the demo company here. So I'm just going to click on Allow Access. Takes me back to the Tradebox Exchange and I can see that I'm connected to the demo company here. So that's us done in the web browser. You can close the browser at this point if you want to. And in Tradebox, just click on Connect to Xero and retrieve data. So here we are in the Xero Accounts link wizard. This is where you're going to choose preferences for how you want orders that are downloaded and handled through Tradebox for your online web store. How do you want those to post themselves into Xero? The sales currency in the top left, that's determined by the sales channel itself. So if you sell in multiple currencies, you need multiple sales channels pointing to the same marketplace. The Xero posting currency is always going to be in sterling, so if this was a foreign currency channel, Tradebox would apply an exchange rate to all the order values before it passes the order to Xero. And the default setting for that is to automatically retrieve an exchange rate from an online service, which Tradebox does at the point of the order download. Post sales as, we're choosing what type of invoice we want to post into Xero, so either with or without inventory items in Xero. The summary entries option behaves a little bit differently. That's where you can have Tradebox bounce many online orders down into a handful of transaction lines for Xero. So say just create a weekly or a monthly summary of just the financials. That's a particularly good option if you're a very heavy seller because Xero isn't built for really heavy users. There's some guidance on our website around using sales summaries and why you may or may not want to go down that route. Choose when you want the invoice date to be in Xero. If we're doing it with inventory, we've got options here to create products if one doesn't already exist, create them as non-stock. Use online product name determines where you're getting the description for of the item on the order. Do we want to set a due date on the Xero invoices? And your don't post orders dated prior to is your start date effectively. So even if Tradebox has downloaded any earlier orders than your start date for Xero, you would just set this and nothing will go through to Xero prior to this date. So if I was to say that I ran all of my processing in Xero up until the start of this week and I want Tradebox to take over from then, I can set that and nothing will go through prior to that date. And post payments against invoices. Do I want the invoice in Xero to pay itself off into my Xero bank when it's approved? If I tick this box, the payment mapping screen will become valid later on, so I'm going to do that. Just next to continue. Contacts, you can run all sales through a single default customer account in Xero. You can still get each individual buyer's name, address, phone number and email address tied to the order rather than the customer contact record. If you want to use individual contacts, just change this setting here. Regardless what you choose, you do need to choose a default contact in Xero. If you're doing single default setting, then all sales will run through this account. If you're doing individual contacts in Xero, you still need the default, just in case there's any information that we can't pass to Xero for a specific online buyer. For instance, if they're using foreign characters that Xero didn't support. Do I want to add the addresses as item lines? Xero only has a concept of one address per contact, whereas most of your online marketplaces would have at least a billing address and a shipping address per order. If we tick these will add themselves to the body of the invoice. Accounts determines the financial ledger side of Xero, so I'm going to choose an account for sales and an account for shipping, which would be my carriage. Other generally refers to shipping insurance or any other cost that a buyer would pay. It's rare that you run into that, but your marketplace may provide it, and if you do so, then you just choose an account to post that stuff through to. And we've got some overrides here in case I wanted to report differently on sales outside of the UK, so one for EU countries and one for non-UK rest of world countries. The tax rates, Tradebox comes with 5 out of the box, one to represent what's a UK sale at 0% VAT, so zero rated or exempt goods as defined by HMRC, one for standard rated, currently at 20%, one for EU business to business sales, which gets 0 rated, one for non-vatable, which would be internal transactions to your business, or if you're not VAT registered, everything should go through on the non-vatable code, and one for reduced rate at 5%. If you sell anything outside of the boundaries of those normal 5, that's absolutely fine. You've got full customization of your tax codes within Tradebox's configuration, and there's some documentation about that on our website. Each of these map themselves to the corresponding Xero code. Because we're in the demo company here, we've got the standard ones, and that's what your Xero would have come out of the box with, as it were. If you've been through and customized your tax rates in Xero, yours may show and have different names. So in that instance only, you'd want to double click into each of these codes and choose the corresponding Xero code from your list of Xero tax codes. But as I say, if you haven't customized your tax codes in Xero's, the default should work absolutely fine as they're already mapped. And so this is the payment mapping screen. Yours might look quite different depending on what type of sales channel it is or what's been done in the channel so far. Most of the marketplaces and the web stores that we integrate with provide a payment method. So with each order, there'll be something that tells us whether an order is being paid by PayPal or paid by credit card or what have you. So you might remember in the postings tab, I chose to automatically raise payments in Xero. If you choose not to, great, feel free to ignore this screen because it won't do anything. But if you've got that option enabled, then this screen gives Tradebox a set of rules to say for each payment method, whether to automatically raise a payment in Xero or not, if it's doing so, which bank to use, and what to use as the payment ref. So for instance, if this one's payment on delivery, I may actually want to deactivate that payment method. Just double click and choose no, I don't want to post a receipt for that specific method. Quote would probably be the same. For my WorldPay orders, well, yes, they've been paid at the point of order. So what I want to do is to choose a bank account from my Xero banks. Let's say everything goes into my business bank account. Choose a reference type that'll go against that payment transaction. I'll give you some preset options there. And post receipt, yes, okay. So that means that if an order comes through as payment on delivery, it's not going to automatically pay into the Xero bank. But if an order comes through paid by WorldPay, it is going to automatically pay into the Xero bank. You'll see this list build itself over time as Tradebox handles new orders. Yours may be completely blank when you first come in here if the channel hasn't had any orders yet. The exception is an eBay channel. eBay by default gives us a full list of payment methods, in which case you only really need to go through and do what I've just done and map the ones that are actually relevant. So when we click finish here, and then save out of the sales channel, it's going to do a quick check of statuses. That's about order posting through to Xero. So if I say yes to the message, that's because I've told my channel which statuses I want to download from my web store, but I've not told it which ones I want to be valid for accounts posting. So if, for instance, I wanted only orders that are completed to go through to Xero, I would leave the other two blank and click in here. Or if I wanted an order to be valid for Xero posting as soon as it's paid, I would do all of these and save out of that. So here we are back at the channels list. You can see the link icon on the right hand side of the screen. It indicates an accounts link. So I've set one up for the first channel, haven't set one up for the second channel as yet. If you are doing a multi-channel integration and you want to connect to Xero, one last thing to show you here is if I go in and I'm going to set up the second or third or fourth channel, go into the Xero tab, and I've got the option to copy my connection details from an existing connection. So it's a much smoother process once you've already set up the client ID and the tokens. All I need to do is connect to Xero and retrieve data.